Alright, what's up guys? Today we're going to be watching our video on dividing decimals. So what you'll need for this video is just one sheet of notebook paper. So what I want you to do is go ahead and pause the video, get that out so that you can take notes along with me, and therefore you'll be prepared for class tomorrow. So go ahead and pause the video. Alright, so before we get going, there's a couple vocabulary terms I want to go over because I'm going to be using these throughout the video, and if you are unaware of what they are, you can always resort back to the video or back to your notes, and therefore you can see what it means. So a divisor is a number that is doing the dividing. This is a number that will be on the outside of the box, and that's the one that's breaking up the larger number, and that larger number is called the dividend. And this is the number that is being divided up. So this is like the big group, and this is the one that goes inside of the box. And the last one that I have is the quotient, and this is going to be the answer that you get at the end of your division problem. So the quotient is just the answer for any division question. Alright, so when we are dividing decimals, there are going to be three steps that we want to do every time we are working with division and decimals. So the first step is going to be to find the decimal. And here in just a second, once I have an actual problem in front of you, it'll make a lot more sense, but I want to go ahead and get these down before I start trying to make it applicable to you. So the first step is always going to be to find the decimal in the problem. Step 2 is going to be move the decimal if needed. So not every single problem is going to ask you to move the decimal, but when they do, we need to know how to do that, and we'll look at a few different examples on how to do that. And then the third step is just to divide like normal. So once you've checked steps 1 and 2, you're just going to divide like you've been doing through school and through our class so far. So those are the 3 steps that you need. So if you didn't copy those down while I was talking about it, go ahead and pause the video and copy them down, please. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at our first example. So go ahead and write this problem down, please. We're going to have 21.5 divided by 3. So go ahead and copy that one down, please. I'll give you a second. Alright, so if we look at our steps, the very first step says to find the decimal. Well, I've got it right here. So I've just bolded a little bit, and I'm going to take it straight up. It's not quite straight, but it's supposed to be. And put it up where our answer will be, or our quotient. And I want you guys to notice that on our divisor, if there is not a decimal, it's assumed that it is at the end because it's saying that this 3 is a whole number. So you don't always have to put the decimal, but I'm going to do it just so that we know exactly where it is. Okay? So do we need to move the decimal? We don't. The only time that we're going to move a decimal is if we have to move it with our divisor. So if we move the decimal within the divisor, we also have to move it within the dividend. But since it's at the end of our divisor, we don't need to move it in the dividend. So now we're going to move on to step 3, which is just to divide like normal. Alright, so again we're on step 3 and we're just dividing by normal. So 3 does not go into 2. So I know some of you guys put an X above it. I just like to put a 0. Either way, it's up to you. But 3 will go into 21, and 21 divided by 3 is 7. 7 times 3 is 21. Then we're going to subtract those, and 21 minus 21 is 0. Bring down the 5. And now we have 5 divided by 3. 3 will go into 5 once. 3 times 1 is 3. We're going to subtract again. 5 minus 3 is 2. Well, this is going to be kind of confusing for some of you guys, so let me go ahead and point this out. This is where we would usually add our decimal and a 0. But since we've already added the decimal, all we need to do is put a 0 right next to our 5. So I'm going to say that again. Since we already have our decimal, all we need to do is add the 0 and then bring it down. So I'm going to bring that 0 down, add it to my 20, and then we're going to divide 20 by 3, and 3 will go into 26 times, and 6 times 3 is 18. So then we would subtract 18 from 20, which is 2 again. And so if we add another 0 and bring it down, we have 20 again. So we're going to get the same answer. 20 divided by 3 is 6 because 3 times 6 is 18. And again, it would be 18. Subtracting, we'd have 2 again. So we could leave our answer like this, and what I would probably ask my students to do, and I'm sure Miss Ms. Sorrells, Mrs. Nelson, and Coach Brooks would ask you to do the same. We would probably ask you guys to round it to the hundredths place. So just kind of keep that in mind, but we'll leave it like that for now, okay? All right, guys, go ahead and copy down number 2 real quick. Go ahead and pause the video and do that. All right, so when we're looking at number 2, I want to make something very clear to you guys. So we're going to go back up to step 2 here where it says move the decimal if needed. I want you to add a little side note that says the divisor must be a whole number. So go ahead and pause the video if you need to copy that down. Alright, so what that means is if we're looking at this divisor right here, we have 2/10 or 0.2. And so therefore we cannot start dividing yet. But if we look over here at example number 1, we have 3 with our decimal behind it. So we need to turn example 2 into that. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this decimal behind our divisor. And since it's assumed that our decimal is right here, we need to scoot that over an extra space because it has to be the exact same amount of spaces moved in the dividend and the divisor. Okay? So we'd ultimately be moving our decimal 1 spot and taking it up and adding a 0 there. So if we were to rewrite this problem, it would look just like this now. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and get that copied down. Alright, so now that we've got this problem correct, we can now begin to follow our steps. So first step is to find the decimal. Well, here it is after the divisor, which is now a whole number, and here it is in our dividends. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take that up again. Remember, just straight up. And then our second step says move the decimal if needed. Well, we've already done that. The divisor must be a whole number. Divisor is a whole number, so we're good to go there. And then we're now on to step 3, divide like normal. So 2 will go into 4 twice, and 2 times 4 is 4. Subtract that, bring down my 2. Now we have 2 again. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 2 times 1 will give me 2. Subtract that, we get 0 again, and we're going to bring down our 7. So now we want to divide 7 by 2. 2 will go into 7 3 times, because 2 times 3 is 6. Subtract that, we get 1, bring down our 0 again, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. And so since 2 times 5 is 10, and 10 minus 10 is 0, we don't need to extend and go past the decimal to add any zeros. Our final quotient would just be 2,135. Alright, so that would be example 2. So go ahead and pause the video if you need to clarify or copy down any of that. We've got one more example, so when you guys unpause it and resume the video, we'll go ahead and look at our third example. Alright guys, so we are on our last example, and all I've done is I've just taken a note card to put underneath our steps, just so that we can keep them and revert back to them as we're looking at this problem. Alright, so step 1 says find the decimal. Well, we've got 1 here and 1 here. The one on the divisor is really 4/10, so that means that we do not have a whole number. So we've got to change that. So we're going to move that decimal behind it to make that number 4. And remember guys, whatever we do to the divisor, we must also do in the dividend. So we need to move that decimal over as well. Mrs. Hitchcock just showed us that. She's a 7th grade teacher, in case you're not aware of who she is. And what they're teaching their students is that this is like copycat. So we've got a C for copy and another C for cat. So when you're doing this correctly, you should always have 2 C's, and you can remember that by copycat. Alright? If that doesn't make sense, I will re-explain it tomorrow in class, but for those of you that do, it should be a nice little helper. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this question. So remember, my decimal is now behind the 4 because I've made it a whole number. And my new dividend should read 34.20. Alright? And we're going to look at our steps again. Step number 1 says find the decimal. There's 1, there's 2. We're going to take that decimal straight up again. There we go. Move the decimal if needed. The divisor must be a whole number. Took care of that. And the final step is divide like normal. So 4 does not divide into 3, so therefore you can put an X or a 0 or leave it blank. It's really your call. 4 into 34 would be 8. 8 times 4 is 32. Subtract those, and we get 2. Now remember, this is just like example 1. Usually this is where we would add a decimal and then add the 0, but since our decimal is there, we're just going to bring down the next number. Now I've got 22, so 4 will go into 22 5 times, because 4 times 5 is 20. Subtract 20 from 22, we get 2. Bring down my next 0, and it's 20. 4 goes into 20 5 times. 4 times 5 is 20. So we get an even answer of 8 and 55 hundredths. Alright guys, those are the 3 examples for the video tonight. We are now finished. Make sure you answer the Google Doc questions. Make sure you put any questions that you have in there, and we will address them tomorrow. Have a great night. We'll see you soon.